Hey guys, welcome back to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath Holland, and I'm joined by one of my favorite filmmakers, Daniel Griffith, the maestro behind Ballyhoo Motion Pictures, to talk about bonus features as they exist right now. Daniel, welcome back to Serial at Midnight.
Hi, it's great to be here. Always a pleasure. Happy holidays, just to kind of
Yeah,
set my
it's very festive.
yeah.
You've got the tree up. You know, even calling the bonus features, you told me a couple of years ago, because this is, I think, this is your third time here, I think. But you said you don't even like to think of them as bonus features because to you, every feature is a main feature. I mean, you spend significant time creating these things, and then for them to be labeled like a special feature or a quote extra really diminishes them for you. And I've always thought about that ever since you said it.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I always put my heart into everything that I do. Even if I have a limited window of time or a limited budget to work with, I tend to make sure that whatever I'm creating, given those restraints, um, mirrors the film that it's being included in. But I but I've always, loved bonus features coming from an age when you didn't have such things as bonus features to that rare opportunity where there would be a bonus video cassette that might have, interviews or documentaries or something about the making of something. And there was very few and far between, but there were a few in the early days before you got into DVD where that was really like the major heyday of bonus content. So,
I remember you and I are the same age. I remember sending off, I think it was serial UPCs for a VHS copy of the making of Star Wars
yes, yeah.
in 95. I think it was 90. I think it was for the THX era, the THX releases to tie in with that.
Yeah, well, before that release, there was the Fox put out that VHS collection that was that included two of the documentaries on a bonus VHS that was basically exploring the making of the trilogy itself. Pretty amazing set. That was on my Christmas wish list that year, and it
Now,
was
did that one have From Star Wars to Jedi, the
yeah.
making?
It was
Yeah.
very expensive. I had like a book, a nice paperback booklet in with it, and a film cell, and yeah, it would that I still own that collection because it was the pre THX remastering, so it still got an element of the I want to say Star Wars was always evolving and changing in Lucas's mind. So, I mean, you would have to go back to original release print to really see what you saw during its original release. But I do think that it's still pretty precious to me as a
Mhm.
person that
Yeah.
collects physical media.
Well, we were talking before we hit record about the current state of bonus features, and you have this is what you do. You create these documentaries and these features and featurettes, and you know that I have such high regard for your work. Most of my favorites from the year came from your hand. I'm thinking about all this stuff for Film Masters. I'm thinking about this stuff at Imprint. You've done some stuff with Scream Factory, but it's an interesting time for these features as well, which is something you were saying, and I want to get it here on the recording that they're being taken for granted like never before, and they're kind of in danger.
Yeah. So most consumers out there, I don't know how many people watch a video cast or podcast or that they read reviews on various different sites. I have and I have dating back to the earlier days of the internet. And if you look at reviews for a lot of these titles, you'll find that very much time and consideration is given to the whatever restoration that might be. But, understandably, of course, it's you're buying a movie. The important thing is the movie that you're buying. The restoration, the audio, and a lot of times the artwork. People are very concerned about how the movie is presented,
Does it
and
have a slip cover?
yeah, the slip covers and what artwork is being utilized or what new artwork is being introduced and how they feel about that new artwork. But often the bonus features, and I'm not talking about what is considered like legacy features or features that were ultimately produced for previous editions, which I understand if they've been reviewed before, just acknowledging them is enough. If you want to learn about, in detail about what that content is, just go look at, the review for the DVD that was, put out, 10, 15 years ago. But as far as new content that is produced, a lot of times it is a footnote. It is kind of like, oh, and there's some new stuff, like an interview with so and so, and this whatever. And I think sometimes that discredits the work that goes into making those. I think a lot of these distributors, certainly when it comes to catalog titles, they are taking risks. These are sometimes films that have come out in previous editions. What are we going to do to make this even more special? And I think that they recognize that adding some kind of content or adding new artwork or, the inclusion of a different cut or deleted scenes or whatever, certainly helps push it over that threshold and, and that opportunity for it to be successful as a release. But I think they're seriously starting to look at, okay, bonus feature content, the amount of money we're spending on it, which isn't that much. Are we better off just saving that money, including what legacy material exists, and putting out this new restoration where we should be putting our money into anyway? Maybe that is the best course of action. And there are a lot of disc producers that work for different companies that are really fighting for the inclusion of new features and recognizing that that's something that people want. But if people don't really acknowledge them, review them, and discuss them, then you're in danger of losing them. And it's because numbers don't reflect bonus features. If everybody's buying a copy of this, if they're buying it ultimately in their eyes because of the movie itself, and maybe because of the rave reviews of the transfer itself. But if there's no one out there saying, I bought this, I've already owned the movie, I bought this because, sure, the new 4K transfer is a great thing to have, but I wanted to see this interview with so and so, or I wanted to watch this documentary, then they're not going to ever tie those things together. And I've heard conversations and I've also heard, word of mouth from disc producers of how hard it is to convince the companies to back and support the inclusion of new video features. And I think that's why we see a lot more commentaries like Kino, like nonstop commentaries, just Kino. And it's because commentaries kind of a low investment in a way. And you get a lot of bang for your buck because it's a person or an accredited person that's a historian or an academic or a person directly involved with the film, discussing the film for whatever duration that film is. It's a lot of bang for your buck. I love commentaries and I appreciate them. And I set up the recording of them, I edit them. So obviously that plays into the bonus feature package. But my interest has always been making documentaries. My company motto, dating back from the beginning, was making movies about the making of movies, and that's always what I wanted to do in this sense. And I'll look up stuff that I've done, not because of ego so much as I just want to know, am I creating something that people are connecting with or something that people are enjoying? So I did a documentary about a almost forgotten movie that came out in the 80s that it's over 2 hours and put so much time and attention, regardless of budget and regardless of schedule. I had maybe a month and a half to put it together, and if not, probably less than that. And but I did it out of a genuine love and respect for the film, and that my hope was by going out of my way to celebrate this movie that people might get behind it, because the inclusion of a two plus hour documentary on the movie package that people would, you know, seek it out and say, "Oh, this must be something worth watching." And I'm not sure if people did. And that movie is Kevin Reynolds' The Beast. Um, I'm not sure people sought it out, and I feel bad because it's a movie that should be more successful than it is, and certainly should be discussed more than it is. And making that documentary, I find the best projects I ever do is when I'm making something for myself. Ultimately, I wanted to know about the process of making this film and wanted to understand the making of this film, uh, because I responded to it when I was a kid, when it played on HBO, after its, you know, measly theatrical run. I, uh, I saw it and was like, this movie is a masterpiece, and it's so brilliantly staged and acted and directed and scored. And Mark Isham's score is just out of this world. It's so great, and I couldn't understand why no one was seeing it, and no one was talking about it. And I was hoping that by making a documentary of that scale for a release that most people had never heard of, that it might push it a little bit further over over that edge and kind of be in the zeitgeist a bit more. And it wasn't. And I looked up every review, and the few people that saw it and acknowledged was like, wow. And there's like a 2 hour documentary or 2 hour plus documentary. Um, but yeah, but I didn't do it to showboat anything. I did it out of a genuine love and respect for the film, and I just wanted to honor those people that I felt like they they just sort of got sidelined and shouldn't have, because it was a brilliant piece of cinema, and I was really honored to get everyone on board with it.
Yeah, that's a good. You've done a lot of really great long form documentaries like that. I think part of the problem is well, I think there's two things probably. There's the sheer amount of volume that's coming out that reviewers are not able to keep up with the product that's being sent to them. I can tell you that I've had people tell me I didn't watch this. I just put it in the player and looked at what was there, and I'll get to it later. I've just flat out people have told me that. And I also think that for some of the fans, they perceive us it's quote value added material. They want to feel like they're getting more bang for their buck, but they don't necessarily spend the time to watch any of it. And I see both of those things happening, and neither of them are good. I'm not trying to defend anything. I'm just saying I think maybe this is where some of this comes from. You know, I've done over a dozen commentaries. Each of them I've probably been talked to less than 5 times about. You know, people are not hearing these things, or if they are, they're not talking to me about it. They're not saying, "Hey, I enjoyed it." Maybe they don't like them. I don't know. But I don't think people are spending time with special features anymore. And maybe that's just a statement of the amount of the sheer tidal wave of titles that's hitting every single year, which is what makes this episode, this video, or this conversation more important than ever, because there have been some really good things this past year. Do you think that part of the issue that features are that the studios want to control the narrative? They don't want all the information out there. They don't want you to know everything about the movie. They don't want you to know what went wrong or how the decisions were made. Is that anything? Do you ever get pushback on any of that from, well,
I,
we don't like that. They'll cut that part out.
I'm always really careful and sensitive to what might be considered too controversial, or maybe something that might come off in a negative light to those involved with the film. I always try to stay on top of that.
Hmm.
I'm not. I'm a storyteller. I'm a visual storyteller. That's how I refer to myself. I don't really call myself a filmmaker. I call myself a visual storyteller. And I'm not a journalist. I don't look at things from a standpoint of journalism. Um, I want to tell the story. I want to do it honestly. But I'm not interested in those gotcha moments. I'm not interested in, how can I sensationalize this? Um, I have loved the medium of motion pictures since I could breathe. And I will tell you that um, there are positives and negatives to any industry, to any situation. Um, and while I want to acknowledge the negative aspects of the experience of making something,
Mhm.
I don't want that to take over or override the positives, which certainly in the end of the day are the reasons why we love the films in the first place. I, I if it happens, but if it happens within the parameters of making the film that directly affect the film, those moments exist in documentaries I make. If they're the things that happened so behind the scenes that have nothing to do with the impact of the movie, I tend to not focus on those things because ultimately I am not um, I'm not a journalist, and I'm gonna say journalist not to disrespect what journalism is. I feel like journalists get to the bottom of something 9 times out of 10. I would say that their hope is to uncover something that they can base their whole article or story on. Um, getting to, I mean, it's very generic, but getting to the bottom of whatever. I mean, yeah, I think that they say that several times in just about any film that has something to do with journalism, the front page. Um, but I feel like, from my standpoint, I'm more interested in celebrating the making of something, understanding the making of something, kind of breaking it down and talking about what went into it. If I made a documentary about something that was solely because of an incident that happened on the set or something to that effect, or
Mhm.
then that would be my focus of the documentary. That would be my but that I never really had that situation. It's always been about relationships. It's been about, I've done stuff that's controversial, and things that you have to kind of um, you know balance the story. And one of my first feature documentaries ever made was about the making of Dark Star, and it's where you had the relationship that was that between Dan O'Bannon and John Carpenter. It was very turbulent, and led to them uh, parting ways to a point where I don't think they spoke to each other for the remainder of their life, or acknowledged each other even. Um, I that was a that but I was interested in how these two creative individuals collaborated to make this film so early in their lives, at the cusp of them becoming the filmmakers that they became. um, it was you know it was it was a controversial uh, project to do, but it
And your
was.
Waterworld documentary has some controversy in it too. And that's one of the most well, okay, so
Yeah,
Kevin Reynolds is making the movie, and then Kevin Costner. There's a battle of egos. It's never you never phrase it exactly this way. Now you're letting other people tell the story as well. But Kevin Reynolds is making this movie. Kevin Costner is this huge star, and he's like, "Well, we're going to do it this way." And then at some point, the control of the movie shifts away from Kevin Reynolds. That's in the documentary. Whether it was necessarily planned to be that, or, to me, that does feel like some sort of a. I know you don't want to say it's a journalism thing, but I mean, it is telling. You're letting people tell their story, and I've been, John Spira. I interviewed documentarian John Spira, and he said there is no truth. Everyone is telling their own truth, and you have to put these different perspectives together and let everybody say, you're letting people tell their story, but you can't. There is no great pure truth because it's everybody's perspective, and that comes through in a lot of what you do. But I'm just thinking about that Waterworld documentary, and I'm thinking about what you just said about Dark Star. And then I think about something like The Force Awakens, like Star Wars The Force Awakens. And we know that Harrison Ford had a prop door fall on his leg, broke his leg, production gets shut down. J.J. Abrams uses that time off to go rewrite the screenplay. This is never going to pop up on any sort of an official feature for Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And so I'm just curious, like we've just you gave me a good answer, but there are some stories that are probably never going to be told. So it's this very intangible thing. The fact that you even have this documentary about Waterworld in the first place and Dark Star, kind of a miracle that these perspectives are even allowed to be out there. Because I know this, there's one studio in particular that they won't let you do any. They don't even want commentaries on some of their films because they don't want to. I mean, I know people that are like, I won't do anything for that studio. If it's from that studio, I'm out because they're too litigious.
Litigious.
Isn't the right word. Just too controlling.
Yeah. Well, and I actually I know what studio you're referring to, and I actually find it's a challenge for me. So I don't turn those jobs away. I'm like, okay, well, I've got to look at this from a different perspective. Um, yeah, okay. So you're talking about Waterworld. Um, I wanted to celebrate the making of a movie that doesn't get made anymore. The way that they made that film, they don't make movies like that anymore. And to me, that was certainly going into it. That's what I want. That's the story I wanted to tell. I loved Waterworld. I followed the making of Waterworld in trade magazines that came to the movie theater I was a projectionist at while I was in high school. I followed the making of that and was excited to see that film long before I saw the first teaser trailer attached to Street Fighter, the Van Damme Raul Julia film. And when I saw that teaser trailer, I was like, "Oh yes, I'm totally behind this movie." And I've loved that movie since its release. Support. I mean, I've championed that movie, and I really don't care how that reflects on me and my movie taste. I know what I love, and that's all that matters. Um, uh, the the thing about Waterworld is you have to explain certain things. And to tell the story correctly, you do have to find a way to explain what happens. If there is something negative that's happened, you have to find a way to acknowledge and explain in some roundabout way what occurred. And you have to tread that lightly sometimes. That was not the reason I made the film. And I guess that's why I say I don't consider myself a journalist. A journalist, the reason they would write a whole article about the making of Waterworld was to tell the story about, the director being jettisoned off of a project and Kevin Costner taking it over. That would have been the whole reason they told the story. To me, that was part of the story, and it was just part of the story. It wasn't the story it wasn't the reason I wanted to tell. So and that's what I mean by journalism. If I took a moment and said, "This is the drama," I've got to tell this story. I wanted to tell a more complete story, and that's how I got everyone involved. I think that there are aspects of Waterworld that had been sensationalized by journalists leading up to its release that I felt was unfair to the movie itself. And that happens a lot. And I wanted to address that this is the reason why this movie costs so much, not the reasons that you read about, not the reasons why, and then who was doing that and why were they doing that? Well, they were doing that because they were shut off the set. Journalists don't like to not be able to visit the movie set to write stories. And they immediately think that if that's the case, then it must be something nefarious going on and that we're going to dig deep and find out. So we're going to hang out at a bar. We're going to talk to disgruntled, people that work on the set, and we're going to, get them drunk, and we're going to have them blab about all these things that happen, and we're going to write all about that. And that is fine. But I wanted to address things that happened and things that didn't happen, and get to the truth of things, and but ultimately in service of the narrative that I wanted to tell, and that was the making of the film. It was that simple. Everything that went into it.
One of the things that concerns me is this new crop of documentary film or features or whatever that are, and I'm not going to name any of them because that's not what this is about, but they exist just as a nostalgia bomb. It is just this like celebration of like, hey, remember Terminator? I'm trying to specifically avoid the ones that I'm thinking about, but there's no real meat to them. See, you say you make these things out of love, but you also bring a lot of substance to them. There's a lot of real um, storytelling in these films. There's a lot of this stuff that's popping up now that I worry is replacing and kind of pushing some of the meatier stuff out that exists just to sell nostalgia. And I don't think that's what you do, but I would love to get your comment. Do you know what I'm talking about? This new
Yes. No,
kind of
no, no, yes.
documentary?
Um, Look, I'm a child of the 80s. I love to wax poetic about, Saturday morning cartoons and, the prizes and the, McDonald's Happy Meals and the local mom and pop VHS experiences I had, you know all these things that made up my childhood that I love nostalgically reflecting on. I love all that, and I would never discredit the filmmakers that are making these films that seem to be more or less very lengthy tributes to that experience shared by our contemporaries and the filmmakers that made them and everything else. If that is what people want to watch, that's fine. I think a lot of people watching those, I find that it may be a lot of people that never experienced them or is probably watching them more. I've watched my share of those, and it kind of it's not as fulfilling as me getting together with my childhood friends at a bar, sharing some drinks and talking about those experiences personally. And that's kind of what it feels like, but just without that personal connection.
Hmm. Well,
Without,
because you're not going to learn anything, probably. It's
I mean,
just,
I guess it'd kind of be the equivalent of, you know, like war veterans watching a documentary about people that didn't fight in that war, reflecting about what that war represents or feels like. You're sort of like you wouldn't watch that documentary. You lived it. You don't need to watch that documentary because I don't need to hear what people that might have or might not have shared that experience have to say about this war. Some people may. I don't know, but I just don't. That for me personally, my personal taste, um, there are too many other things out there that I want to watch. But I appreciate that there are people out there. There's an audience for that, and they must enjoy it because they keep making them. So so that's good.
they must enjoy him because they keep making him. Is that why they keep making him, or do they just make money? That's the question.
I don't know.
It's a collectible. It's a
Yeah,
thing
it's a
that,
collectible. Yeah, there
yeah.
is something to be said about, and I had this argument because I love film scores, and I want to I want to have certain film scores as a hard copy. So I want to have it on CD. Now I don't mind having it on vinyl, and I might listen to it on vinyl as well. But there are some scores that only come out digitally and then on vinyl, and people buy the vinyl. I I will bet you 20% of those people that buy those soundtracks on vinyl actually break open the package, pull out the vinyl, and spin it. Most of the time, it's a collectible. And most of the time, it just sits there and it doesn't get much use.
I
And
saw a statistic, I
um,
think it was last year, 2023, I think it was, but it might have been this year, that half of all record sales are sold to people that do not have a turntable.
yes,
Half of the people that are buying them don't even have a way to play them.
yeah, and I get it. The art is great, and packaging is really cool. I have lower behind me. I have my vinyl collection of soundtracks and vinyl that I had when I was younger, and vinyl that I inherited. And um, uh, but you know, I mean, I'm apart from a rare film score, I'm probably not going to listen to it on vinyl,
Yeah.
but but I certainly would listen to it on CD, and it's unfortunate that uh, they don't see the market for the CD release of a score, but see the market for a vinyl release, but it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with the score, it has everything to do with how it's packaged.
Yeah.
And I would say that that does cross into film and television on physical media. Sometimes things are package based. Um, I cite an example. One of my favorite physical media releases of the year, and I'm gonna say this because it was before Vinegar Syndrome announced the 4K of The Keep, which I will tell you now, we are living in the end times because The Keep is finally on a physical media format other than VHS or some bootleg DVD, Blu-ray, whatever that we've had to suffer through for years. And I know that Imprint put out a DVD release of that, and I'm not going to discredit what they did there, but it is not to the magnitude of what all of us that watched that film throughout our lives have been praying for. And Vinegar Syndrome, I haven't got the release yet, so I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what's on it, but it is pre-ordered. I pre-ordered. I'm one of the lucky people that hopefully will be seeing it hit my doorstep anytime. Um, but before that was announced, the release I was so excited about was Sony's release of the Frank Capra set. Now, uh, I'm a big fan of Frank Capra's movies, and there are a lot of movies on that set that I'd never seen and only read about in the various, not only his autobiography, but also McBride's book and several other, the films of Frank Capra book that I have. Um, so I'm super excited to see those films in there, and I was just so incredibly thankful that those films are now available to me to watch. But I guarantee you, there's a group of people that probably bought it for its packaging. Those same people are probably like, I'd say, confused about his packaging because when I got it, I was like, wow, that is not how I pictured it. And I'm very thankful that collections of movies don't come out this way because then I'd have to engineer shelving to support this type of packaging because I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this designed for? Like sitting out on top of my like
Like,
cabinet or
and
something? Or like
yeah, it's
you
a,
can
in an
easily
angle.
access these now. Just open the flaps and it's nice and like engineered, but people watching this, I want you to go, and I'm sure there's numerous unboxing
I
videos.
did one. Yeah, they can watch it right here. Yeah.
Yeah, so watch the Serial at Midnight unboxing video, and I'm sure you will discuss the interesting decision of how to package that.
It's
That
bizarre, right? Because it sits at an angle for one thing. It's like it's not flat, and it's
right,
also there's like this much. There's like an inch or two of of just cardboard on the
hollow.
bottom of
It's
it. I
hollow.
think that's
Like
there for the base.
yeah,
To
there could have been a drawer there with like some
yeah,
knickknacks and like stuff.
yeah,
Like
there
a
could have been.
yeah.
I figured like maybe it's there for integrity, for structural integrity. I don't know. And then what I discovered after I made that unboxing video, I think I put it in text form or whatever. It's like you open the doors, they slide in.
It's
I didn't even
like
know they slid in. So-
yeah. Yeah, but it's great, and I'm so excited. And I will say, I commend the major studios that delve into their library like Sony does.
yeah.
Those Sony classics collection sets that they've been putting out volumes of. The best part
One
of
right here.
the
This is the
I will
Columbia
tell you now,
Classics.
the best part of those right there to me is that bonus disc or that inclusion of bonus things, the
Yes.
bonus films of movies that they probably like. No one's going to care about these movies, and I'm like, that's the reason I bought the set.
Yes.
And those collections of short subjects on that was it volume two? Was it volume two that had the collection of? It was a volume one or two, but they had like this massive collection of just short subject stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, so that to me I mean that makes that release and what they did with Capra. And I haven't watched the documentary that's included on it yet, but I'm happy that they went out of their way, or somebody went out of their way to make a feature documentary,
Yeah.
and it's on its own disc in that set. It's pretty impressive.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
the negative to that set is the lack of digital, but I mean it is what it is. But the but yeah, so that was a release, as far as a release I had no connection to, that I appreciated. But as you were talking about film masters, uh, this kind of dates back to my my goal or mission when I was doing the bonus features for the Shout Mystery Science Theater sets. Is I saw an opportunity to give films that people disregarded, uh, to give them kind of this criterion treatment within the limitations of what I have to work with, to give them this criterion treatment. And in working with film detectives and film masters, it provided an opportunity to sort of continue that mission of being able to create great features and help procure commentaries for films that would never get this kind of love.
Hmm.
And sometimes they're films that people genuinely love, but just no one stepped up to the plate. And the fact that the team at Film Masters have done so should be commended, because any other company would just throw these movies out there. But I will tell you now that there is a small group of people that just put genuine love and care into how these films are presented in the best way that they can, again given limitations, and packaging them in a way that I think is very respectful to the films. The artwork on those releases, you look at anyone else, they would say, "Oh, this original artwork is crap, and we got to come up with something that is like whiz bang boom that modern audiences would connect with." No, it's very respectable. If they do come up with something different in the artwork, it seems to match and marry well with the film itself, and not trying to overly sell some teenager walking by the video shelf in Walmart. Like, oh, I want to watch this movie, regardless if it was made 50 years ago. Um,
Hmm.
there's no concern like that. This is they know their audience. They know that the people that love these films or would like to see these films in a better presentation, they know who they are and what they would be expecting, and they do the best they can. And in a lot of ways, they hit it out of the park. And we're lucky to have a company like that um, putting out these releases. I mean, so you talk about the magnitude of releases that come out. Um, we are not living yet in the era of physical media is dead. And it's so weird when people say that. I feel like the people that are saying physical media is dead are the people that don't even buy physical media.
Yeah,
So,
they're just
um,
getting clicks.
it is. I mean, it's to me, it's you know, it it's inaccurate. From an insider point of view, I don't think we're living that reality yet. I mean, I would argue that we may. mm,
I think we're headed into it.
we're going to run out of the titles coming out that the people that make the decisions to pay the money for the titles that are available. I think we're going to run out of titles that they think have a market, like they have like an audience rather for it.
Hmm.
Um, um, I have been trying for years to get the the early Paramount catalog that's now mostly a good percentage owned by Universal, um, to get a lot of those titles available, and get these boutique distributors to go after them, more aggressively. And a lot of it comes down to like the availability of the masters, the studio
Do
maybe.
you mean the Universal titles, the Paramount titles that Universal picked up for the TV deal in the early 50s, all those
Yeah,
like
yeah,
30s,
yeah. But
40s,
a lot of the early Paramount stuff, like early
like
Western.
Double Door.
Um,
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
yeah, a
yeah.
lot of those things is what I'm kind of going after.
Yeah.
Like a lot of like the early Randolph Scott films and stuff like that.
Well, okay, so I just talked to Frank Tarzi about this at Kino Lorber, and because I was asking him about some of the, not necessarily Paramount, I specifically was talking about Republic, because there's all these, Paramount's done restoration work for a lot of Roy Rogers films,
Yeah,
and and he was like, I'm not going to pick it up because I can't make money off of it. God bless somebody who wants to, and I'm like, who wants to? Can we,
yeah.
for the love of God, can we get these movies on Blu-ray?
Well, yeah, and there is that. I think Frank, what he's doing at Kino, he does a great job. I think they put out a lot of stuff, and sometimes they put out a lot of stuff um, ahead of the opportunity that could exist to create features for them. And I think that from my point of view, there are releases that they do that I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have known about this and we could have put
Yeah.
time into this. Um, but, but yeah, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm thinking of you just reminded me. I'm like, this was a Kino Lorber release, this Cab Calloway
Yeah,
feature, and I don't think there was anything. We get introduction by film historian Ina Archer, and then the rest of it is just archival stuff. I'm like, man, if anybody deserves a documentary or some sort of a lengthier featurette, it's Cab Calloway.
yeah,
And I say that I just have my stuff all around me, but I would say that as a fan of Cab Calloway, who would have loved to have, if not been involved myself, to have seen somebody else tackle some of this stuff. I mean, to your point, there's a lot of opportunities for lengthier, meatier features, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. That is concerning me is I do, though we do have some great features still from yourself and from a few others, I see an influx of, hey, isn't Ghostbusters great? It was really cool when they had the proton packs and there's nothing to them other than like this thing's pretty cool. It reminds me of those VH1 specials from the 90s and the 2000s. Be like, I love the 80s, and to be like, oh yeah, they just make an observation that we all know, and that's the content. I see a whole lot of that. That's my concern. Is like that's replacing meatier, weighty discussion about film, but that's not what you do. But um,
well,
I hope that's not the direction that things are going in 2025 and in beyond that.
I think I think my goal is really to create content that if you look at the things that I've done, I really do try to go to the source when there's no opportunity. Let's say, for instance, if it's a movie where mostly everyone has passed on, you can't really go to the source. You start to go to the sources to create something new. Um, and but I do have the opportunity to do stuff that's more contemporary, where people are still with us, and
Mhm.
I always love the opportunity to be able to tell their stories. And I mean, this year alone, a project I was really excited about was Drag Me to Hell. 4K of that's coming out, and I knew that Sam Raimi had in his archive, uh, you know, hundreds and hundreds of hours of behind the scenes video, and I shot a lot of new interviews and incorporated a lot of archival stuff that was filmed on the set and built this narrative about the making of Drag Me to Hell that its goal was to transport the audience back to the time in which the film was made and to really embrace the magnitude of behind the scenes stuff. And I mean, I just hit the, just the tip of the iceberg with it. I mean, there's so much more there. I hope to revisit that at some
I
point.
was going to ask you, how do you, with someone who has the deadlines that you do, how do you go through hundreds of hours of footage to cull together an?
Very, 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 very diligently. I watched through everything and sort of built and pieced together things as I went watching through it. So I didn't have to watch and then make notes. I just sort of was like, oh, that's a really great part of that scene. That's a really great part of that scene. That's a really great
Mm.
part of shooting this. Here's a really great archival comment about that scene. So I just started as I watched, I cut out stuff and pieced it together in folders that would represent each scene that was being shot or a location that was being utilized. And then when I filmed all the interviews and started building the narrative, I kind of built that based upon what I knew was there and what I learned myself from watching the footage. So it's kind of like I was there watching the making of the movie and reporting on it.
Yeah.
And so there is an aspect of that.
Like
But
a journalist? I'm just
kind of like a
kidding.
journalist.
I'm just kidding.
Um, yeah. My point of the journalist part is just
I
that
know, I know.
my goal isn't
You're not
isn't
looking for dirt.
I'm not looking for the the hook in a story that is tied to something something negative or revealing.
Yeah.
Um,
Salacious.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and not to say that every journalist that's what they do, but I do know that what drives a story from most perspectives is that one point, that one reason,
Yeah.
and my reason is always from the beginning to tell the making of the story or to tell the life story of someone or to celebrate the films of someone or whatever. Um, in that, I start to learn about them, the process, or whatever the case may be, and that will inform the drama of the narrative. But to go into something thinking there's got to be some dirt here, or the
Mhm.
dirt is what's going to sell. That's never been my mission.
No, and that's kind of dishonest in its approach. That approach is a dishonest approach to go in looking for a specific thing because it might not be there, and you're missing the greater narrative. You're missing the bigger picture by focusing on something that you're looking for.
Well, as you mentioned before, you know, we're talking about things from the past. It's hard to get down to the exact truth of the matter, or what exactly happened. It is all based on the recollections and remembrances, and so you have to kind of tie those things together when you're building the narrative. And there's many times where I know that someone's misremembering something because I know that the person that was there remembers it this way, and then it's backed up by another person interviewed that remembers it this way, but this person
Yeah.
sees it from a different perspective. You kind of start to learn, you find the truth as you go along, as much as it exists within the recollections of others. But the ultimately, when I make these things, it's really to transport the viewer into the period in which something was made, and I kind of allow them to understand it. And I really make those because I want to know.
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like if I'm sincere in my approach and I want to understand and I respectfully want to get to know the people involved, um, I feel like I'll be able to create something that you know has a voice and people want to watch and learn about. So,
You always do. You put together some of my favorite things. Do you have can you pick between your children? What are you most proud of this year?
um, yeah, I don't know. I was really happy with how Drag Me to Hell turned out in the end. Stuff I've done with Film Masters, I really appreciated and loved working on, and there was stuff that I did with Shout over the course of the year that I really loved. Um,
Well, 45 projects in a single year, that's a massive amount of work.
yeah.
Uh, a big library just in a single year. And I know probably the next year is going to be as big, I would imagine.
Well, I would say in the next year there are two projects that have been gestating that are finally going to see the light of day. And uh, one of them is the project that started me doing this work in the first place, and it dates back that long. And the other is obviously Empire. So anybody who's watching this are going to be waiting for you to ask some question about the
Shaking
Empire.
their. I wasn't going to ask. I wasn't going to.
And so that will be it. And there's the thing. It's hard to explain to people that ask that the reasons for something taking so long are not as simple as just can't finish it or whatever, because in a lot of ways it's pretty much there. um, it's that I can't just, after all that's gone into it, i can't just I can't just put it out in a way that isn't celebrating what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to stand by the vision that I had, and not deliver something that is highly compromised, because everything I do in some roundabout way is compromised by budget limitations, time limitations, material. And this was a project that I solely control, and I want to be able to include all the things I want to include and be able to package it the way I want to package it, make it available the way I want to make it available. And a person less stubborn than I am would have just thrown it out on a on Blu-ray and like a homemade package, and I burned them myself on my system, and at least it's out there, kind of thing. But then I would be doing the subject matter a disservice. And more importantly, all the people I've interviewed that I highly respect, I respect them, I respect their work, I respect their memory. Um, all those people were, it would have been in vain if I would just throw it out in some, half-assed capacity. Um, I have a clear vision. I've paid for really excellent artwork for what's going to be represented as the film itself, visually, and marketing. And I have a really nifty trailer that stars Tim Thomerson playing Jack Death, probably for the last time. And so all these things have gone into the marketing explosion for this project. And it's just been trying to line up the right mode of release that has been the most difficult thing. And it's not because people aren't interested in it or anything like that. It's just the way that people want to handle it um, is different, because they see through the numbers that a documentary isn't going to pull much. And so I believe in it differently, and I feel like there's a better home and a better way to get it out there. And I also have to stop working to be able to do that. And there's an aspect of that where things are so busy, and this is a project that no one's paying for necessarily. Good people have, they have, donated money to a campaign to help get it over that finish line. And I don't want to discredit or dishonor them by just throwing out something. I want to give them something that's a real bang for their buck.
I think that's really admirable, and hopefully everybody understands. Um, I feel like we've reached a good conclusion point here. Is there anything else that you want to hit before we ride off into the sunset?
No, no.
Tell people where they can find, give your social media handles. I'll link to it in the description of this, but I want to give you an opportunity to give your websites and all that stuff.
So I'm available to communicate with on, obviously, on Facebook. I'm still on X um and on Instagram, and I'm pretty reachable. But it's Ballyhoo Motion Pics, PICS, a kind of abbreviation of pictures. But that's pretty much how you can get me, or Daniel Griffith on Facebook. But that is, and then Ballyhoo Motion Pictures website is ballyhoomotionpictures.com. So, and I usually keep things up to date there, but there are also links to my social media on that site.
Very good. Very good. You've given us a lot to think about here, and I appreciate uh the onus is on us, not trying to be funny, but like we have to support special features. Let's elevate them and give them the attention that they deserve. And it's just it's a call for me as well to really talk about these things in a way because they matter and they are in some ways endangered in multiple ways. So I appreciate you for all of your incredible work over the years and for bringing this idea. This was your idea. I have loved talking to you about it. You've given me insight and things to think about that I wasn't even aware of before. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank everyone out there that's watching these features. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing.